everyone! Today I'm coming to you from my backyard because the weather's super nice today, and so today I'm going to be filming, or going to be starting, my Asian Readathon vlog. So if you're unfamiliar, Asian Readathon is a yearly readathon hosted by with Cindy here on YouTube. I'll leave her announcement video down below, which it kind of introduces the readathon and also like all the prompts, but pretty much it's just a readathon in honor of AAPI, or Asian Heritage Month, as it's known here in Canada. And this is my first year I'm going to be participating, so I figured it'd be nice to kind of document my experience. Editing Colette here. So I realized that I somehow lost the footage of me talking about the first two books that I wanted to read, so that's what we're going to do now. The first book that I wanted to read is The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang, which is the second book in the Popular trilogy, and this is for the prompt, read a book by an Asian author that has a high rating or was highly recommended. So if you're even vaguely into fantasy, then you've probably already heard of the series before, but if not, it's essentially just a epic historical military fantasy inspired by 20th century China. The first book has an average rating of 4.12 with over 100,000 ratings, and the second book has an average rating of 4.39 with around 48,000 ratings, so I would say it definitely fulfills the prompt. So the next book that I wanted to read is Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel, and so this is for the prompt, read a book featuring an Asian character who is a woman and or older, and also for the prompt, read a book by an Asian author that has a cover worthy of googly eyes. Essentially, Kaikeyi is kind of like a feminist mythological retelling of the ancient Indian epic called the Ramayana, if I remember correctly. So in the Ramayana, Kaikeyi is kind of like a more minor character. She kind of only appears in the beginning, and so she is kind of like this quote-unquote evil stepmother figure who banishes the main character, Rama, for like 14 years or whatever in order to get her son on the throne or something like that. So essentially, the epic kind of follows Rama's journey while being banished, I guess. But Kaikeyi obviously follows Kaikeyi and kind of her story, like from when she was younger to growing up to her marrying the king and stuff like that. So for the last book that is kind of on my like main TBR, it's going to be for the prompt, read a book by an Asian author that has a universe you would want to experience or a universe that's totally different from yours. And so the book I'm going to be reading is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabra Tahir, who is Pakistani. So this one is a YA dystopian fantasy type book. I'm sure you've all heard of it, so I'm just not going to like read this or talk about the synopsis. So those are all the books on my priority TBR. It's Dragon Republic, and Ember in the Ashes, and Kaikeyi. I might also read The Red Palace by June Her. I also may be buddy reading The Jasmine Throne with one of my Twitter mutuals. So in terms of like ethnicities, so Kaikeyi is by an Indian author, The Dragon Republic is by R.F. Kuang, who's Chinese, and An Ember in the Ashes is by oh my god, I was about to say Tasha Suri again, by Sabra Tahir, who is Pakistani. So they're all by different ethnicities, and so it fulfills that part of the challenge too. And yeah, let's get into reading. Hello everyone, so I'm here for my first reading update. So I finished The Dragon Republic a couple of days ago, but I never really got around to filming my thoughts, so here it is. I am back in the same hoodie that I was wearing in the introduction, mainly to match the cover, because you know, it's white and blue. My hoodie is white and blue, you know, gotta match it like fictional fates. But yeah, so I read on my iPad. I borrowed the ebook from my library. Side note, I feel like most people on BookTube that I've seen, like, they don't really read ebooks. Like, they just read like either physical books or like audiobooks. But like for me personally, I feel like my audio processing skills are like not that good. Like, it's just like when I like listen to stuff, it just like I don't absorb it as much. So I ended up giving it a 4.75 out of 5 stars. Yes, I use quarter systems. Don't come for me. It's my rating system. So I'm not really good at articulating my thoughts or remembering my thoughts. So I have my Goodreads review here up so that I can kind of like remember what I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to be looking down a lot. So I don't really know how to rate this book at first because it's not really a very happy book, and I usually rate based on enjoyment, but I mean, this book is kind of pretty sad. Like, not a lot of good things happen to Rin, like our main character, and so there's not really like a lot for me to be like happy about because she's kind of just suffering the entire book. I surprisingly didn't cry at this book, which I was shocked about because I definitely thought I was going to cry because I feel like most people when they read this book they end up crying. But I think like maybe it's just because it's been kind of a while since I read The Poppy War. Like I read it last summer, so I kind of am not that like emotionally attached or as emotionally attached to the characters as I would have been if I had just like read it back to back. And I'm planning on reading the entire trilogy back to back like next year when I read The Burning God, so that I can annotate the first two as well. So next year probably gonna cry, but we'll see. So aside from emotional impact, for me when I was reading this book, I feel like there wasn't really anything wrong or like anything that like was kind of jarring or that I didn't really like about this book. Like I think I really like R.F. Kuang's writing style, and I think it really fits this story because it's very like, it gets to the point and there's no like, so it's not that flowery. I mean, this is a military fantasy based on true historical events, so like in terms of the writing and the plot and like the character development, I really liked it. I think R.F. Kuang did a really good job with it. I think like for me personally, usually when I read stories, I tend to get attached to the side characters, and then so sometimes when like maybe the side character does something kind of not bad, but just like not like maybe like they do something to the main character, like I'll defend the side character. Like so, for example, in Haikyuu, I'm pretty attached to Kindaichi, but if you've watched or read Haikyuu, you know that like him and his team kind of like quote unquote abandoned Kageyama during one of the games. I mean, obviously there's like a bunch of like backstory to that, but I will like defend Kindaichi, right? Because I'm like, obviously like what he did is like kind of a bad thing to do, but also I'm like, oh no, but he's like justified in doing it because you know Kageyama treated him and was like really mean to him. But like with this, like even though I objectively liked, let's say like Noja a little bit better than Rin, just based on their personalities and stuff, I still was a lot more emotionally attached to Rin than Noja. And so like at the end with that one scene, like instead of like defending Noja, like I was more like, oh my god, how could you do that to Rin? I also really like the discussion at the end with Rin and her kind of about her connection to the South and how it affects like her perception of herself, because I think me as a reader also kind of fell into this trap where after she got to Synecdoche, right, she kind of erased everything like about herself that was relating to the South. Sorry, that was like really hard to say, but like you kind of forget that she's from the South because of the way she acts, and she like never mentions kind of like her home, like her background. Like she mentions her brother once sometime within like the beginning of the book, and like I literally forgot who that was because she doesn't really, after she gets settled at Synecdoche, like I'm not too sure because I haven't read the Poppy in a while, but I feel like I don't think she thinks about her brother that often. And so like you can tell that she's really trying to separate herself, like separate that South aspect of herself from like her new identity. She's trying to like rebuild her identity, but at the same time, right, like in this situation, like Rin doesn't really have a positive experience with the South, and so can't really blame her for wanting to kind of get rid of that part, because like she mentions in the book, like it's never really done anything good for her. Like being from the South has only ever brought her more suffering and more pain and like more discrimination, and so it makes sense that she'd want to dissociate herself with that. So that was the first book that I finished in the Asian Readathon, so woohoo. The next book that I'm going to be starting, well I already started, is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabata here. This is the old like cover that I got from my local library, which was the first time going to my local library since the pandemic started, and it was an experience. I swear I like literally forgot how the library works. I'm very excited to be continuing this. I'm on page 169. I would tell you the chapter number, but I don't know how to read Roman numerals, so we're not gonna do that. I'm enjoying it so far. I think the writing style is not what I expected it to be. Not necessarily in a bad way, but I think especially with Elias's perspective, I haven't read from the perspective of a guy or like a male main character in a while, especially like a teenage male character. So it was a little jarring. As long as it's not that bad. So I actually really like the way that the author is doing character exposition. I think she's not really like info dumping at all. Like the author kind of integrates the character exposition and like their backstory into the plot and only discusses kind of like the relevant information and only brings it up when it makes sense. But yeah, I guess those are just like my thoughts about An Ember in the Ashes so far, and I'll update you guys once I'm done. So I finished An Ember in the Ashes by Sabata here. I actually finished it like a week ago, but I never really got around to filming it, so here we are. I have my review pulled up because for me I kind of use Goodreads reviews as like my book journal, I guess. I ended up giving this book a 4.25 out of 5 stars. So before reading this, I had only really heard good things about this book, so I went in with pretty high expectations, and while I wasn't necessarily disappointed with it, I just didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. I think part of why I didn't really like it is because I feel like Elias could have been a lot more subtle and a lot smarter about like his distaste for the Empire. I think it would have helped him not get into as much trouble and not draw as much attention to him and make people suspicious of him, which would have allowed him to get away with more and then also like I guess achieve his goals more easily. But I mean, Blackcliff kind of teaches their students to be ruthless, you know, and violent. They don't really teach them to be intelligent, you know, so. Plus, he's extremely privileged because he's literally like the son of like, the grandson of like this really high-ranking general. So it makes sense that he's not as adept at being subtle or like hiding his emotions and stuff like that. And also because, you know, he's like a teenage boy, so yeah. I don't know if he's technically a teenager anymore, but you get what I mean. I also felt like the attraction between Elias and Laia was a little insta-lovey. I mean, I kind of get it with Laia because she's like 17, so she's like a teenager, right? So it makes sense. But with Elias, he's like 20, right? But I mean, on the other hand, I feel like it could make sense just because, you know, he is a guy who isn't really surrounded by girls a lot. One thing I will say though is I'm kind of glad that the author makes, this is kind of a really small detail, but the author makes sure to mention that like from other characters, that other characters think Laia is pretty, like in an objective sense, just because I feel like it makes the love triangle more believable. Like I feel like if she, you know, was constantly describing herself as ugly and people were calling her ugly, I feel like it wouldn't really make sense to have two guys fall in love with her, maybe not fall in love with her, but be attracted to her really quickly. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. One of my favorite tropes in fantasy is secret identities, but I feel like the things that usually make me enjoy it so much, like not being able to share your true self, worrying about how the other will feel once they find out who you really are, those kinds of things weren't really present in this book, not because it was poorly written, but just because those aspects of the trope weren't really relevant to this plot. So I can't fault the author for it, but that's just something that was kind of disappointing for me. But yeah, overall I enjoyed the book and I'm definitely going to be continuing on with the series. So I finally finished the last book that I wanted to read for the Asian Readathon, which is Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel. It's actually June 4th right now. I finished it yesterday, June 3rd. So technically I did finish it past the Asian Readathon timeline, but if you take out the times or the days where I wasn't reading, then technically I would have finished it on time. But, so yeah, I ended up giving this a 4.75 out of 5 stars. This is actually the first book that I made written annotations in. So for example, here I like wrote stuff in the margins, and so this is the first time I did that, and I did it in pencil because I was kind of scared to like, you know, like make too permanent of a mark in my book. But yeah, I ended up liking it. I didn't really write that much in this book, so I think for now I'm just going to continue making pencil annotations, and then hopefully one day I can start writing in pen, just because I really like the way I think like pen annotations look for me, because my handwriting is very like neat and stuff. It doesn't give the same like effect, you know. For this one, I think like I made annotations at the beginning, but then towards the end I kind of wanted to like finish it, so I kind of was just like reading and then tabbing versus like actually writing. The only reason I didn't give it the full 5 stars is because I didn't really like have that emotional of a reaction to it. Like I didn't really like cry or anything. So the main thing that I really liked about this book is that it portrays a lot of like seemingly harmless but actually quite misogynistic and harmful attitudes and actions that are present within society, both like now and back then. There are a lot of moments that I tabbed where you can see like similar sentiments that are portrayed in this book still present in today's society. So for example, there's this one moment where Kaikeyi's brother is trying to teach her how to, where is it? Oh yeah. So there's this moment at the beginning where one of her twin brother is trying to teach her how to, I think, shoot an arrow, but then like it says, after my first mistake, he would flop onto the ground and complain about the difficulty in teaching a girl such things. The reason why this stuck out to me is mainly because I feel like this kind of sentiment is still really present today. Like a lot of times when a girl is trying a male-dominated activity or field for the first time, she's kind of expected to just be good at it immediately. And if she doesn't, right, then that automatically means that like, oh, girls just aren't suited for this kind of thing. So like, for example, like for sports, it's like, oh, like if a girl, you know, is not immediately good at it, it's like, oh, you know, like girls just aren't meant to play the sport. which is kind of dumb if you think about it, because like a lot of the times, like when guys play these sports, like they also make a lot of mistakes. You know, sometimes they make even more mistakes, but then no one's like, oh, you know, like guys just aren't meant for the sport, right? So that was really interesting to kind of like tab throughout the book and kind of take notice of. So that's pretty much what I thought about this book. And this, I really enjoyed reading it, and I would definitely recommend it if you enjoy reading stuff like Cersei or Ariadne. I haven't read those two, but they're both on my TBR. So yeah, if you're interested in kind of those like feminist mythological, I think, retellings, then I would definitely recommend this one. So those are all the books that I wanted to read for the Asian Readathon. So The Dragon Republic, An Ember to Ashes, and Kaikeyi. If you guys are even remotely interested in reading them, then I would definitely recommend checking them out. I gave all of them above 4 stars. So, you know, they're approved by me. I definitely really enjoyed taking part in the Asian Readathon this year. Even though I didn't read as much as I wanted to this month, I still got to a lot of good books, and I think like my average rating this month was probably above a 4 stars, so it kind of balances out. So yeah, I hope you guys like watching this video. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!